Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I start where my honourable friend for Hayes and Harlington finished. I'm completely perplexed why the Government Minister is holding out against Lord's Amendment number 22, not least because he told Insider last year it was perfectly legitimate to criticise political parties for accepting donations that are not clear. He was making it absolutely clear at the time that he supported the idea of legislation to enable or to require political parties to be clear about where their funding was coming from. Now, to be fair to him, that was obviously not when he was a government minister, and he has now fallen among thieves. But I think I prefer the old version of the minister, and I just hope that in our discussions over the next few minutes we can manage to persuade him to return to proper form, because the pedigree for Lord's Amendment 22, as has already been referred to, is phenomenally strong. Not just Lord Carlisle, not just Lord Evans, the chair of the Committee on Standards in Public Life, who have directly called for this to happen, and of course head of MI5. But as I understood Baroness Manningham-Buller's comments in the House of Lords, she too supported Amendment 22. Lord West, we've been referred to, all the members of the ISC, Spotlight on Corruption, the Committee on Standards in Public Life, as I've referred to, and of course the Electoral Commission. Now, the Electoral Commission wrote directly to the Government Minister last year to say that it must surely be wrong, and we should have a change to the law so that political parties can only accept donations from companies that have made enough money in the UK to fund the amount of their donation. You would have thought that that just stands to reason. You would also think that it would just stand to reason, as they also argued, that political parties should be required not just to check whether somebody was a permissible donor in the sense of being on the electoral register, but whether they had enough money of their own to be able to fund the political party to the degree that they were. You would think that that was just due diligence, but the law has phenomenal loopholes on it. Now, the Minister is normally a very, very polite and generous man, but he still hasn't replied to the Electoral Commission on this matter, so far as I understand. And the Electoral Commission have complained about this. I would say that in this area, as he knows perfectly well from the work we've done on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, complacency serves us ill. You've only got to look at the sad trajectory of the Tier 1 visa system, the golden visa system, which meant that we, in the end, had to admit, when finally the report was produced, that we had been giving out visas to people to live in the UK, to make their permanent residence in the UK, who were people that we ended up sanctioning because they were so closely related to the Putin regime. The 2020 Russia report from the ISC, which should, of course, have been the 2019 Russia report if the then Prime Minister had allowed it to be published before the general election, which made very clear that Russia and possibly other state actors as well had been intent upon affecting the elections and referendums in this country, and urged us not to be complacent. There are authoritarian state actors who wish us ill. They rely on our political openness, the openness of the political system that we have in the UK, and our open system of governance in the city, and on the fact that we have contracts that can be enforced, and on the open judicial system that we have. They rely on all of that, and I would argue on our complacency to be able to do their nefarious work in the UK. And there is a flaw in the Political Parties, Elections and Referendums Act. Permissible donor is too tightly drawn as a concept. Surely, any political party, any person acting in trying to secure donations from a third party would want to ensure that the money they were receiving was not tainted either by human rights abuses in another country, or by authoritarian acts from another country, or frankly from malign influence from a third party state actor. And it has been made worse by the Elections Act of 2022. 3.5 million overseas voters added to the registers, who pay or may pay no tax in the UK, may have next to no relationship to the authorities in this country, very difficult necessarily to track down. So what would a party do? What should a party do if, for instance, they were offered a donation for, let's say, £50,000 by somebody who lives and works in Moscow today. The law says they have to do nothing as long as they are on the electoral register. But surely we would want to say, I'm not sure that that's quite right. I'm not sure that that's appropriate. I would want to have further checks in place. And the provisions in the amendment are so minimal. Absolutely the minimum that we have to do to make sure that political parties in this country are doing the basis. Now, I've said that there's a flaw in PPERA, a fissure, if you like. But the danger is, I'm starting to worry that the government wants it to exist as a loophole, because otherwise I simply don't understand why the Minister is holding out on this point. It is a minimal requirement. I really hope that the Minister will change his mind in the next few minutes and will support Amendment 22 from their Lordships. Otherwise, I hope the Lordships will throw it back to us if we end up voting it out. Because I say this, for more than a decade now, we have left the door wide open to political interference in our system in this country, and it's time we slammed it shut.